This video is brought to you by GameMaker. And if you've ever wanted to get into game development, GameMaker does this really crazy thing where it's free. Just start making and only pay when you want to release your game to the world commercially.
It's fast, it's user-friendly, and there's easy-to-follow tutorials, plus a dedicated community to help answer even my questions. How make man jump? GameMaker is a 2D game engine that's helped bring some of yours and my favorite recent experiences to life, like UFO 50, Chicory, Anton Blast, and of course, Yahtzee's own Starstruck Vagabond.
Ooh, are we talking about GameMaker? I love that program, it's so easy to use. As well as Starstruck Vagabond, I also used it to make all 12 projects in my 12 games in 12 months Dev Diary challenge. And I couldn't believe how much sex I got out of that. None. I got none at all, which I couldn't believe.
So what are you waiting for? Head on over to the GameMaker link in the description and start cracking away today, because we want to play your game.
Yeah, looking through this list, I'm seeing one of you made Armpit Fart Tycoon, and I've got several questions for you.
What was that, Tina? Carry on. Well, there's a big one in the. Hello, welcome to DevHeads, the podcast focused on the ins, outs, and goings on of game development with host experience ranging from indie double to AAA. I'm Jay, your indie representative, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host Tina.
Hello, how's it going?
And Mikey.
Hey, I'm Mikey, and I always go second because Jay is a chivalrous, polite man. Thank you, Jay.
Oh, it's a gender thing?
No, it's not a gender thing. It's a hierarchy thing because of that jacket,
decided,
Tina.
I've decided to victimize myself.
As a AA?
As the double A, yeah, going second. We stand second to you triple A's and your nice gender, as Jay just pointed out. Doesn't Tina have a lovely jacket on today?
I know. I'm going to get ripped for this one, and I'm all here for it.
Why are you wearing that jacket, Tina? What is it? Because of today's topic?
It's comfy. Yeah, corporate. I didn't mean to dress this fancy. It's been a morning.
It just happened.
Guys.
Yeah, I just fell out of bed. I fell out of bed and fell into this jacket.
Dude, so I'm gonna get a hoodie in the middle of this conversation. I'm just gonna turn off my video, run over.
Look like you're one of the people.
We
see right through your bullshit hoodie.
You should wear the hoodie with the hood up, but with the jacket over the top. So
yeah, exactly.
You look like you're trying to be a foot in each world.
Yeah, there you go.
Topic for today. Yeah. Why are layoffs still happening in the games industry? And this is a kind of broad question because I think for a lot of reasons there are a lot of different answers. But I guess the first thing is there an idea that they shouldn't be happening in the games industry? Like, should we be in a realm where, because especially in the AAA space, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tina, sometimes development can lean towards more movie structure where once the project is finished, people are kind of let go to pursue other things, so that for the next project you're prioritizing hiring the correct people for things. Am I correct in that assumption?
In some occasions, yes. In the studios I've worked for, that hasn't been the case, but there's a couple different reasons. So when gamers hear news about, their favorite game studio or game laying off employees, it's always sort of like out of the blue, right? Because as consumers, we don't really understand the business behind the decisions being made by a publisher or like the people that run the studio. And so I wanted to kind of dive into some of those reasonings before I answer you, Jay.
Oh, 100%.
So sometimes it's because, 100% of the time it's because there's a budget conflict, right? In terms of paying off all the employees, paying to keep the game going. There's costs involved. Games aren't free. As an indie, you know that probably more than anyone here because you get hit by it the most. I think in AAA, as a developer, you're sort of in the dark about the financial part of making a game because the bigger you are, the less you are required to be involved with the decision making in terms of finances or things that could impact finances. Also, working on a AAA game that has longevity, you are less inclined to care or be concerned about the game being bloated in terms of the amount of work you have to do and features that are being added in at the last minute, or bringing on a celebrity last minute to do something, because the money's always just there, so you don't think about it. And I don't, Mike, is it the same in AA as a developer?
Do you mean is it the same as far as the initial question of do people move on to other projects after it gets released? Or which part do you mean specifically?
No, are the developers involved in the day-to-day of understanding the financial decisions being made or discussions that are being had?
No, there might be it's different with every team, right? Because AA is a vague term, but also largely just indie with more money and more people.
Yeah.
In my experience, no. Not everybody on the 20 to 50 person team is privy to all the financials and stuff. It depends on how transparent leadership wants to be, right? On the financial situation. I feel like I saw a video once. Yeah, I did. I forget when it was, where it was, but it was about Tripwire. And I forget all the names of the people involved and who was saying it. But they were all called into a room before they shipped Killing Floor 1. Right, which is a big risk for them because Killing Floor 1, I think, was a UT 2004 mod for Unreal Tournament 2004. And they were very transparent about the financial situation, where I think the team was saying to leadership, look, we need a little more time before we ship Killing Floor 1. Can we have it? And this guy, I have to try to find the video, and the guy responded look, we only have enough money for the end of the month, so we have to do something. This is how much time you have. That, to me, was an example of extreme and sensitive candor from leadership about a financial at what I think you would call a AA or an indie at that point of Tripwire, to say to their company, or to say to their workers at the company, we only have this much money. Sorry. Yeah. That's an example. Usually you're not really privy to it. Leadership handles that. And you could be just as shocked as somebody at a AAA when a layoff happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to get back to Jay's question, it depends on the studio structure, right? There was one studio I worked at in terms of, finishing a project and then deciding how many staff we keep or get rid of before moving on to the new thing. At one particular studio I worked at, anyone below senior on the team was on a contract. And that's very much like Hollywood, right? Where movies and films or TV shows are based on a contract, and that's once you're done with your work, you're done, and then you're not a part of that team anymore. This particular studio I worked at treats younger devs the same way, right? So they decide, okay, we might renew your contract, or we might hire you full-time if we really like you. And then everyone else that's senior and above maintains the status quo, and they just keep moving on to the next thing, whatever that may be. When I worked on my first game studio that I worked at, there was no sort of understanding about, for me personally, where people would go once we worked on the next thing. I think it's because live service is very different. When you work on a live service game, there's a lot of all hands on deck kind of situation, and I was always envious of the single player team because they were allowed to take 3 months off or a couple months off and relax because we shipped a game, let's celebrate. But if you worked on multiplayer in any form, any department that touched multiplayer that needed to work on it, we're we did it. Okay, we wake up tomorrow at 9 and let's go. It keeps going.
It's it doesn't ship, right? It's not. Yeah, you don't have this. We've shipped. It's you keep going. Things are still happening.
There's no end. I can only imagine what it was like to work on World of Warcraft because it just doesn't stop. So, I remember getting to the point where I felt like I was doing the job of 3 to 5 different people, and if I took a day off or I got sick, the people that relied on me would be hurting until I got back. So it was really, it was really a really difficult decision for me to just want to take time off. And that's why I think a lot of us got stuck in this crunch cycle in the early, was it 2010s?
Yeah.
Which you don't really hear about anymore, because I think a lot of live service teams, if they do it right, will hire enough people especially globally, so that if the cycle, of making something doesn't stop, at least you move it between territories where they're awake,
100%.
or if like someone drops off for a couple weeks, or has like a kid, the project doesn't suffer. So it's a really crazy balance of budgets, I'm sure, that I don't really appreciate or have enough info to articulate correctly. But I just want gamers to understand that it's a big thing, and server costs can be a huge budget killer too if you're making a multiplayer game.
Yeah, and you kind of need to prioritize that in that instance, rather than potentially bringing on contract workers. I feel like it kind of thinking about this nebulous idea of budget, right? And especially in the AAA space and a little bit in the AA, of not understanding how much money there is to throw around. Also, the flip side to that is overfunding things, and this is how layoffs can happen in the sense of, I'm not going to name the studio because it might lead to the people who speak to me being named, but big studios I know that have effectively infinite money, more money than God, and because of that just start funding everything, and are just let's chuck money at everything, and then they get 2 or 3 years into the projects and they realize for whatever reasons it's not working, or maybe the revenue stream from their core thing is dipping slightly, and then they start panicking. Then they just kill every project that they haven't revealed yet. They're just cut everything, and 3 years of work for hundreds of people is just
gone,
lost. And those people's, a lot of them get let go, and some are reallocated to different projects. But sometimes having too much money can lead to overcommitment in certain sectors.
It's interesting, right? Because there's a lot of just from an observer's standpoint, a lot of the gaming community wants AAA games or big budget companies to throw more money at new things and creative things. I think we talked about this on the last podcast, right, Mikey?
Innovation.
You were spearheading that, innovation's really important. But then when you do that and it fails, and the game is cut and the people lose their jobs or potentially move on to other things, that's not great either. So
it's risk, right? And that's kind of what I was touching on in the last one, is as much as I was advocating for the idea of how important innovation is, that's an easy thing to say, of course, hard to make happen. My main points there are about how AAA can't, in a literal sense, can't afford to take risks, right? Because it is so expensive and risky to take risks.
I wouldn't
and there's so many people.
Well, go ahead and finish.
Just that so many people, their livelihood depends on some form of stability. And again, it's not about that they don't take risks. I think I understand how you feel about that, Tina, and I would agree. Risks have been taken in AAA projects. It's they're not in a position, as much of a position to take risks as some other companies do when it comes to the innovations. That's more my main point about it.
I think the biggest disagreement we have here is that it's the type of risks that we're talking about, right? I do believe that AAA has the opportunity to take risks, and they do. It's just there's also that necessity to respect the IP and what players expect out of it, right? That's a drawback or a setback, but that's a good setback to have, in my opinion, because that means people are playing your game, and you want that, right? Because if you don't have that, then your studio potentially shuts down. So I did want gamers to understand the difference between full-time and contract employees, and why those are two very different things for game development. Do any of you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, so it's kind of if you just in any other job, if you are working on a contract basis, you're brought in to fulfill a certain criteria of work for a set amount of time, and then sometimes once that contract's up, you off you go. You know, you've done the work. We've paid you for that work. Thank you very much.
Look
And
for the next
sometimes
step.
it's on a, you know, probationary, like, oh, after 6 months or to a year, we'll have a look at how your performance has been and whether you're a good fit for us or we really like you. And then we might extend your contract or bring you on full time, you know. And that's very common in a lot of the work sectors, and clearly is very common in the AAA space. And I understand the need for that in the space, because if you hire everyone you ever work with full time, this is how layoffs happen, right? You're just like, well, we needed 600 people to finish this game, but for post content launch, we only need 150. You are losing a horrific amount of money for keeping everyone on. And that's when it isn't just contract workers who know they're going to have their contract ended and have new work lined up. People get let go and it's out of the blue, and there's huge influx of workers into the space, so it's harder to get jobs, right? There is a benefit to doing contract work, but it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tina.
For the people that control the money, right, for any project, a contractor is cheaper in the books because you're not paying for health insurance, which is an expensive cost, especially in the United States.
I didn't even consider that. This is my British brain.
Yeah. So when you hire someone full time in the United States, you have to cover their health benefits. You have to provide benefits for their retirement, right? Like pay into their 401k.
Yeah.
So their salary is not just the baseline of how much that employee is; it's everything else that comes with it, right? So the retirement and the healthcare, and then in addition to that, we need to buy equipment for this employee, or at least maintain equipment for it, right? So you need an IT department or someone to help out with that. Then you also have the consideration of, okay, well, where's the studio located? Do they have an office? That costs money. Do they own it or do they rent it out? The electricity bill is money, right? And we all have to pay for electricity if we want to keep the game going. And then you also have your fees for programs that you use to make your game, right? So there's like Maya, which artists use. Adobe makes a ton of money off of game developers. There's Jira. Jira's the biggest, I would say, like bug task tracker that's used in the game industry, and they make a ton of money. Shout out to those guys because they're in Australia. You don't get a lot of those making it big. Is there anything else I'm not thinking of, Mikey? Like, there's a cost, right?
I think there's an important piece. First of all, like I totally agree with everything you guys are saying. Another big reason why so much contract work happens, though, that I feel like should be acknowledged, especially in the indie and AA space, is the internationalness of game development becomes more realistic with the contractor model. You could pay somebody as a contractor, and they're just as much a full-time member as anybody else would be on the team. They're putting in all of their hours. They're getting, hopefully the company is compensating them fairly for those hours. But it's not realistic for most companies in the Indian AA space to have a guy or anybody who's abroad in some other country and be able to hire them as a full-time employee. It's complex, it's expensive. Maybe they don't want to move, right? It really depends on the situation. But earlier in my career, especially, and right now, obviously, because I do contracting and consulting, but early in the career, especially, I would jump onto teams and I would work there and I would be doing a lot of work full-time, fairly comped, all that stuff. But even if the full-time employee thing kind of was an avenue, it didn't really make sense for what the company wanted to do because it was their model for paying people, and it was more flexible, and you could just work with anybody around the world. That was a big reason for why it was so common, was just that you had to hire people outside the U.S.
The risky part about working as a developer, as a contractor, is that you're not, it's the healthcare and the retirement bit that you don't get, but also you don't get the benefit of any sort of perks of being a full-time employee at a game studio. Those perks could be getting a free console if you work for Microsoft or PlayStation. Like, you don't get that as a contractor. The other big thing is if there's any sort of profit sharing or bonuses related to shipping a game, if you're a contractor, you're not entitled to any of that either. So you just kind of work.
That's not necessarily true. It depends on the model. I won't be specific, but I do know of teams that have done that. Like, they have people that worked with them as contractors, and they did have a profit share.
So they have that in their contract?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to write it in. And look, what you're saying is like
That's
most
pretty
of the
rare,
time,
though.
totally right. Oh, it's extremely rare. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it's also a common model for indies and double A's because like they can't necessarily pay people a lot, but they do know like, well, once we have a game come out, we know we'll make something, or at least they feel confident that they'll make something, and it makes sense to just take a slice of that and give it to you later.
Well, that's
this is
currently.
like, yeah,
But
Carry on, sorry.
The rarity
it's
of that,
not
though,
uncommon. Yeah.
is that so that's not very common. There are AAA studios, you can think of like Epic Games, for instance. They're like located almost everywhere because of the sheer size of them. But in order to you need a huge budget to be able to open up studios across the globe. So the other thing that gamers probably aren't aware of is that all these companies pay taxes. I mean, some may be better about it than others, but there's tax laws in every country. So like if your favorite studio was, opened up or wanted to hire people in Europe, for instance, you need to have a studio based there, right? So you can hire employees that work from there. And then your budget that's in the US or whatever it is, you have to kind of like divide that up so you have enough to pay for the taxes and employees in this other country. And then you also need to have lawyers that help you out as well, because then you're obligated to support whatever country's laws there are for hiring that said employee, right? So like France, for instance, gets a ton of time off. Like I think the whole month of August they don't work. I don't know. There's something like that. But
From the game devs over there, I know they end up working a lot anyway.
Yeah,
but
yeah, sure.
but I guess
Especially if they're shipping. But there's like different.
But you're right. Culturally,
rules
there's
of it.
definitely a
Yeah,
you're
like
totally right. Yeah, it's different.
the amount of time off they get, that's another financial cost. In other countries, it could be significantly more because in the US we've traditionally gotten a lot less than the rest of the world. So that's included as well. But if any sort of tax laws or tax write-offs change, that could severely hit the budget of a game studio, which could lead to layoffs. And that's why I'm personally scared about all these crazy tariff things going on in the United States right now, because that's going to hit a bunch of game studios.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't even think a lot of the devs realize that just yet, because it's sort of like out of sight, out of mind. But I think we're going to see more layoffs in the future because of it.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's kind of funny how a lot of people, especially in the gaming space, weren't really awake to what was happening with the tariffs until Nintendo delayed
Released
the pre-orders for the Switch 2, and everyone's like, oh no, this can affect the things I like too, right? It's like, it's going to affect everything.
Did you guys see that someone said, I think it was on Twitter, they're like, get your politics out of my Switch 2. It's like, it's not that they want to involve politics, it's like it runs the world.
Politics. Yeah, Nintendo are doing this out of spite and not because it's going to drive the cost up of their productions by 40%. Yeah, it's tough. I like going back to contract work. I think it's important to understand of like within the right context. It is kind of the point I made at the beginning that I want to dive into a little bit more is the idea of game dev being able to plan what's coming for themselves personally. Like when you are a contract worker, if you know your contract's coming to an end, you can seek new work preemptively, like 6 months beforehand, or be going to events and networking so you have something lined up.
Yeah.
Which can hopefully lead to more permanent positions down the line. But if you're kind of hired full time on a basis where they know they're going to fire you, right? Let's just say they hire you full time. They want to give you all the benefits just to keep you there, and then they plan to let a bunch of people go. That comes out of nowhere to you because 9 times out of 10 when you're laid off, you're not warned. It just happens out of nowhere. And well, then what do you do, right? Like what you had is gone, and you have to go find new things. And like I said before, a lot of other people would have got let go, just like we saw at the beginning of this year. There was a horrific amount of layoffs, and a lot of my game dev friends are still struggling to find work because such an influx of extremely talented developers have been thrust into that space. So it's so hard to find work. So sometimes having that contract space sometimes helps. I'm not advocating for we should hire people on contracts. Everyone should be full time if possible. But
So
it's very dependent. Like as somebody who's working on contract right now, exclusively contracts plural, it's in some cases people are more willing to hire you because they might have done a bunch of layoffs and they don't have to pay you as much as they need to pay a full-time employee, right? It's easier to just bring a contractor on board. In other cases, they are absolutely pinching their pennies and they're like, no way, like we can't work with a contractor right now. Like we have to make do with the people that we're already paying. It doesn't make sense. So it really just depends on the team and the timing and the situation. Has been my experience, doing the contracting thing here right now.
It's all fluid, just like with all game dev.
The beauty and the pain of living in the USJ is that every state has specific laws for layoffs that are different. So like in California, for instance, if you lay off over 50 people, that's what's considered a mass layoff, you have to give a 60 days notice to the employees.
Okay.
So the devs are sort of aware of what's happening. But I've also seen, murmurs, just reading social media, that there's websites, like state websites, funded websites that will actually list major companies that are planning to do layoffs in the future that may not have been verbally expressed to any of the developers. So sometimes you can kind of get a glimpse of like, oh, like, this company is going to do that, and they didn't tell any of us, so let's mentally prepare for that. But so there's ways around trying to figure it out. But yeah, in a lot of cases, companies will leave you in the dark as an employee because it's like, if it's not your responsibility to know about budget, why would they share? But I would encourage developers, if any of you are listening, to be curious and ask your leads, if they have any info about budgets, if you're concerned. The biggest personal concern I have for friends in development right now is, like I mentioned earlier, the tariff thing and how that's going to impact development. The biggest one is supplying new tech to studios, right? Like at one point, if you thought, oh, in our budget, we can buy, I don't know, let's say like 10 PCs, right, next year for new employees, and you thought, oh, putting aside this much money for it's going to be fine. Well, PCs may jump at double the price, maybe, especially because most of the parts are manufactured in China. And what's the tariff right now? Like 125%?
125%, yeah.
Yeah, so like that sucks. That budget needs to increase, and I think that's going to hurt smaller studios or indie studios much more than the AAAs, because they probably have the buffer room to deal with that. But there's things that I'm probably not even considering, or that we aren't even considering. It's gonna get nuts.
I don't know if I agree with that last point, how indies and double A's would get hit harder. They'll certainly get hit, and double A indie, they have a smaller budget. But I'm trying to think at least of all the different costs that are associated with being an indie or double A, and like the costs are pretty low aside from usual living costs and stuff that wouldn't be as deeply, at least directly, affected by tariffs and other economic conditions. So I feel like it might be more of a AAA thing because they have higher costs and probably have to, buy more stuff that would be imported. So I feel like it'd be them. That being said, I mean, the point I guess you're making, which could be true, is like, well, the AAAs have all the money, so they can afford to buy those extra PCs and absorb the extra costs. But I don't know. But we haven't even zoomed out yet and talked about like the broader, to me at least, of like, why is all this happening? I would be curious to hear from both you guys your opinions, because to me, this all, I don't want to say like it started with, but it was, at least to me, the theory that I agree with the most of why so many layoffs are happening is overinvestment during the COVID period, right? COVID happened. Everybody was inside. Everybody was scared and using digital things to entertain themselves. Game stuff went way up. People were buying video games and playing them. And there was a lot of investment that happened as a result of that because there was a lot of money going around. I feel like that because of that, not just in games specifically, but just in tech in general, it was inevitable that there was going to be a drop down from that point where once people are back outside and they're buying games less, look, all those executives, all those people, those teams in general, not just the executives, were forecasting for this to happen where, okay, we're going to be able to make this much later. Even if they weren't super optimistic, even if they were realistic and acknowledging what happened with COVID, it seems like the estimates were inaccurate. And so what do? You have to end up cutting costs. You thought you were going to be making more money and you weren't. That's one theory that I agree with. The second would be live service is made a huge impact on how video games are made and work. And I think the thing that we're finally seeing now is a lot of the games that people are playing are over 5, over 10 years old, and they don't want to leave them. They're okay paying for the monetized things within them. They don't feel like they have to spend that much, or they do spend a lot, but they're so invested in those projects and so invested in the new content that keeps coming because they like them. Why would they move to something else? The other games that they're playing are their side games. They're not their main things, as opposed to pre-live service. So this has a tremendous effect on the industry because now people are just stuck with their live service games that have been out for years. They're not interested in buying new games. And you have all the tools that are making games so much easier than it used to be with Unity and Unreal and everything, all the engines. Game Maker.
Yeah.
Shout out to Game Maker.
Sponsor.
Shout out to Game
Thank
Maker.
you, Game Maker, for to me, like I'm curious what the both of you think. These are the big, the high level zoom out reasons why I feel like it's happening, not just to gaming but to tech in general. The overinvestment component, the live service being so good at retention, and then the oversaturation that happens as a result of it being so easy to make a game that so many people can do it, which is great in some ways, but also has this kind of effect.
Look, I'm a producer, so I'm coming at this as a producer, right? And a lot of the things that a good producer wants to do is manage where the time is being spent, keeping people informed of what efforts being made towards the game, and trying to get rid of wasted effort, right? But also protecting momentum. That should be like the number one goal of a producer. I agree with you that there was a lot of money being spent during COVID. We were like one of the recession-proof industries that was out there. And a lot of people thought, okay, I want in on that. A lot of VCs said, I want to spend money and make my own, make a profit, because obviously games are like easy, right? I think a lot of the investors in VC don't understand game development. And so when people approach them saying, here's, our team that we want to grow and here's our idea, there probably wasn't there's a couple of things. I think that in some cases, the deals were not great for a lot of the people that took the money. I also believe that, to be a true creative person, you need to be you need to kind of put yourself in a protective bubble where you don't have to worry about the stresses of finances or how you're going to pay the bills, right? To do the best job possible. I personally saw a lot of AAA devs breaking out from under their publisher saying, hey, we've been doing this for decades. We're ready to break out on our own and make our own studio. And in AAA, because you don't always get that day-to-day interface with finance or budgets or lawyers and things like that and running a business, you may not be business savvy. So I think that a lot of these startups that came out of the COVID lockdown era, a lot of them probably didn't have the business savvy to deal with all of these new responsibilities, right? Okay, we're going to give you, I don't know, let's say for the first couple of months, we're going to give you $45,000 to make a prototype or something, right? You as a sole person starting your own company, there's the financial payments you need to make to a lawyer to help you start your own company. Then you need to make some sort of handbook for these new employees. And these are things that you probably never cared about or wanted to care about. You just want to make a damn game with your friends, right? But then you have to be very smart about when you hire people, right? Because there's a cost behind that. So you have this much money. How do I maintain that budget until we can get to the next step and get more money? But do I want to hire 15 of my friends that are ready to go right now? Like, or I might lose some of my friends to other companies because they need the money now. Like, do you want to spend all your budget right up front and hope for the best that the demo works? Like, that's crazy, which is, a huge risk. So I think there's a little bit of responsibility on the developer side too, where it's like, okay, I am now a businessman and a game developer. And I don't know if a lot of people were prepared for that.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a lot of money to get. What do you do with it? It's easy to mismanage.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the producer's side of things, like I've seen, from experience that there's a lot of waste that can go on, right? I mean, if you decide and design to cut a feature, you're like, this isn't working out. We play tested it. This sucks. If you never communicate that to the rest of the 300 studio team, like the audio team may be busting their ass working on that feature that was cut last week. That's
Dude,
a lot of wasted work.
I don't fucking know how they do it, man. I have dipped my toe into, a little bit of AAA and stuff, right? As far as contracts that I've done more recently and being at Meta and stuff. But I just don't, I haven't been on a team that's made a game like a large scale multiplayer game, let's say, with a team that's between 200 and 800 people, maybe even more. Yeah. And they're all over the world. I don't know how you coordinate and do all that. I don't know how you remain cohesive.
You have people like Tina.
I guess you have people like Tina, yeah. But you could have 1,000 Tinas.
Producers, yeah.
Let me rephrase that. It's not good to have 1,000 Tinas.
You don't want that many producers. Yeah. They may
have
that
many jackets.
Yeah.
No.
Too many jackets. Much as we like you, Tina, and all of your jackets.
No. I agree. If you have too many producers, it can mess up your project.
Yeah, but basically, I guess I'm saying as an aside, it's crazy to me, the level of coordination and the maintaining of cohesion, and as a result of that, tons of waste, dude, tons of waste.
Yeah, no, I've seen AAA games can waste a lot of stuff. They're in
the best position to do it, right?
Give an anecdote about a place I interviewed at once that gave me a huge red flag. Oh yeah, the Guy Ritchie thing.
You've already said that. I think people can go back. Yes. You've already mentioned the Guy Ritchie stuff before.
Okay. I interviewed at a AAA studio. I was so in love with this because growing up I played their game and I was like, I love this franchise. I can't wait to throw my hat in the ring. This was recently, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? No, 4 or 5 years. Anyways, I was going to be one out of 50 producers. And I was like, that's weird for
How big was the team?
400 maybe, including QA.
That's a lot of producers.
50 producers for a team of 400.
Yeah. And so they were interviewing me to do UI for their character select screen. And I was like, okay. One menu tight, that's easy. How many people am I working with? And they're like, you'd be responsible for 8 people. I'm okay. What about when you need to do localization and stuff? Do I handle that? And they're like, oh no, we have another producer for that. They looked offended. So they sort of siloed almost every minuscule feature in this game. And so no one communicated. And I'm pretty sure there was a lot of wasted work. And the studio today barely holding on by a thread. A lot of the people aren't there anymore.
I wonder why.
Yeah, no.
I remember, how many producers were there on Apex, Tina? And how big was the team, if you can remember? Because I'm trying to get an idea here for
there was
some sort of visual.
There was our boss, Drew McCoy, who was the executive producer. I don't know, his title always was different for me for some reason. It was creative director, executive producer, lead. So yeah, he there was Drew, and then I was on board to do production, just producer, and then there was 2 APs on the team, Josh Medina and Andy. Oh, I forgot her last name, but she's amazing. Andy is amazing. I think she's at Bungie now. She was really good at her job, and I respect her a lot.
Sounds like 4 or 5 then.
Technically, there was 3 of us. But just doing 3. The day-to-day.
Okay. Yeah. And how big was the team?
I think there was about 130 of us when the game shipped, and that included QA.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty That's a lot on you three. Shit.
Yeah.
That feels to me abnormally disproportionate. Like I feel like you'd need more producers. I'm thinking about Andre Bittner, right? Kingdom Come designer that we had on. If you want to check it out, people check it out. It's a great podcast. Didn't he say like they had a team of a few hundred, and he only had like 3 producers or something like that. It really makes me wonder how teams define producer and how they operate. Because you said 50 to 400, I think was a moment ago. So like 1 to 8 for this place where you interviewed. And it creates the siloing problem. But I guess there's really no standard, even within one field of production like AAA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
would you be communicating mostly with leads in that context? Like, because there are so few producers, would your main
are there any leads?
Be the lead of each
8
department?
people to 1 producer is what I'm wondering.
With the 8 people to 1 producer thing, I think you're only caring about that one little group.
Yeah, I mean, like on like an Apex or like a Ragnarok. Like when you had so few, would you be a lot of your communication and making sure everyone's on the same page? Would you be going to each individual team member at that point, or would you go to the leads of each department and communicate? So the communication would trickle down in that sense.
On Apex, there was always lead meetings where the 3 of us in production would always just bring up concerns we had. We were responsible for different departments, right? So like, one was responsible for design, and design is like I would say one of the tougher departments to wrangle in production because they really can't be limited in what they work on. Like you can't just say, oh, they're prototyping this new thing, let's put it in alpha, beta, and final phases on the schedule. Like, no, that doesn't work. That's not how you do production for design.
Yeah.
And then there was another producer that was assigned to art. So there was like anywhere from concept all the way through like environment art, props, outsource art, which is a huge undertaking as well. And then I had everything else that you could think of. And I would say that was probably too lean. I suffered a health issue during that time on Apex that I'm not really happy about. I neglected my health pretty badly. I had what I thought was a mini stroke, but now they're saying might be a hemiplegic migraine. I wasn't drinking water. It was really bad. So I would not recommend.
Why weren't you drinking water?
I just forgot, like running around and stuff. Everyone in the studio knew I was coming because I would wear these like small platform boots that would make loud noises when I walked by. So they're like, oh shit, Tina's coming. Whether they liked me or not, I don't know. But that was a different time. But anyways, back to the budgeting stuff. A lot can impact whether layoffs happen or not. A lot of the times it's money reasoning. And so that sucks. Like the one thing that I don't understand and can't find research on that's frustrating me is Marvel Rivals. Why the fuck was that whole team impacted? Didn't it do well? Am I wrong?
It did very well.
No, it did obscenely well.
So why were they laid off?
I think I spent enough money on it personally to fund that game.
You're in the credits, Jay. Special thanks.
I'm in the credits as biggest whale.
Biggest whale. Fattest whale.
I guess we can only speculate because a lot of the people who worked on the project are keeping it close to their chests, obviously. And I don't want to do too much speculation because, I think it might be a little bit I don't know, insensitive to the people who are involved. But I guess, like, at the end of the day, there's a lot of tension between, like, it's primarily a Chinese team. And there's a lot of tension started to rise up once a certain person got into power. So there are speculations that might be involved, or maybe that team isn't needed anymore. We just don't know because nobody's openly speaking about it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like, so obviously politics can't completely stay out of games.
I mean, we all know that I just said I spent a lot of money on that game, and I really love it. It was one of my games of the year last year. I've stopped playing it entirely. I haven't touched it since the layoffs because for me, this is a step too far to remove like core designers of your team, directors, for whatever reason, and to do such a large part of your team day like that. I don't feel like supporting a company that would do something like that. So that's my personal taste. I don't begrudge anyone, especially my friends who still play the game. You do you.
So you stopped in
But,
protest, is what you're saying.
I stopped in protest, not in the sense that I think me stopping playing would have any effect, but like I personally have lines for my personal. Just for me personally, I have lines that if are crossed, I'm like, okay, I'm not touching your thing again. Like I can forgive certain levels of mismanagement or scandals within companies, like when you have, and then they fix them, right? They move forward to fix certain things and become better and grow from it. I can understand that. I'm not someone who just boycotts things and then I'm done. But for me, I was just like, this feels dirty from the whatever. I can't remember the netties who did it. I don't know. It just felt dirty to me, and I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to continue to throw lots of money at this game, which I was, and lots of time. I'm going to put my money and time somewhere else because I want to support companies that will support the people who made it, right? And the people who were let go were integral parts to that product existing. So yeah, that's just my stance.
Yeah. We have some questions.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Dark Jackal donates $5 and says, "Good afternoon. If you had unlimited funds and time, where in the world would you travel to in order to do research for your games?"
I know mine.
Whoa. That's a bit hard to. So, do you mean like for projects we have currently going on, or do you mean a project that we would like to do in the future if we could go there to do the research? I'm trying to understand the context.
Assume the latter.
There.
Assume the latter.
Assume latter. Okay, so dream game, you can go anywhere you want, and you want to do some research to see it. Is it cheating to say the moon?
No.
Can I go to the moon to do research for a sci-fi game? Is that allowed?
Yeah, that's allowed. You have
Sure.
unlimited funds, so you can.
I have unlimited funds. I don't know if they do private trips to the moon. I feel like I read something about that recently.
Well, you have unlimited money, so you can do whatever you want.
I'll make it happen. I have unlimited money, of course.
Yeah, I'll just buy NASA.
Okay.
You have no, you don't even need to
let's
buy NASA.
compromise
Just
here.
call up your homie Bezos or Musk to help you get to the
my
moon.
homie.
Their
Yeah,
little
that's
companies,
right.
yeah.
We're real tight. We're real tight. They love hardcore tactical first-person shooters too. The compromise. I'll just go to space. I'll go.
Alright.
I'll go to space and I'll orbit the Earth. I'll go to the ISS or something, and that'll be the research that I wanna do. I guess that's my off-the-cuff choice. If I could think more about it. Yeah.
On the condition that you
What's that?
base jump from space, you have to jump out of the shuttle and.
Oh my
and
god.
come
Oh
back to
man.
Earth as a comet.
What's the risk of injury there? Am I in a capsule or am I?
No,
Oh,
just
you're
free
naked.
falling. Free falling.
Well, then I'm
naked.
Your butt ass, dude.
Okay. So what you said is you can go do that, Mikey, but you have to be okay with
You
dying
must
after
die.
it's done. It's not like a cute little challenge of like, oh, do you have the courage to jump out? No,
Oh,
it's like,
broski,
can
you
do it, but
better
then
you better
die.
be a king at taking notes because once you
God.
come down, you know,
Speaking
pass that
of,
off to your producers.
But that's my answer for now, at least. Go ahead, Tina.
I
What's
was gonna say,
yours?
speaking of dying,
Speaking of dying,
you know,
on the topic of death.
Bezos is like, they're putting together an all-women team to go to space, and I think his like fiance's on it, and I don't know, some other women are on it. And my first thought was he's gonna Challenger this ship, and it's gonna explode on takeoff. Like, oh my god. Sorry, I'm just
That'd be
Your,
terrible.
your thought is that he's allegedly is using this as a way to assassinate people.
Well, hold on. No. Hold on. I think what Tina's saying, if I may offer, Tina, is she heard about that and she thought of how bad the optics would be if, like, this first all-female trip to space ended with that, with a horrible disaster, right?
That would
Is
suck.
that? Yeah, I agree. It would suck for a bunch of people to die.
I mean, it was the former, but we'll go with the latter because it makes me seem nicer.
Okay.
But, for mine, Dark Jackal,
Yeah.
I guess I have two answers. Like, I'm currently making my dream game, so my answers will be a little bit spoilery. Okay, I'll say them nebulously so you guys can read into this as much as you want.
Please.
The places I would go would be Scandinavia, Greece, Egypt.
Opa.
Where in Scandinavia?
Everywhere.
Just,
I have
yes,
unlimited
all
money.
of it. All right, cool.
Where else? And those would be the three. But if I was going to go just for like a game dev centric place, I would just go to Japan, because one, how they make games is so much more interesting and don't have a lot of layoffs. Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't it be great to have a guest on that would talk to us about the difference between Western and Eastern game dev? Ooh, teeing something up. But also because they make such unbelievable, incredible innovations in the arcade space. Like, they have some crazy ass arcade games there, and I would love to just go experience all of the innovations they've done and see if that can inspire me.
My answer is Antarctica. I'd want to go to the South Pole.
Antarctica. You put such an
Antarctica.
emphasis on ant. Like it's a city
Part
for
of the
ants.
Arctic with all of the,
And I would hire our
There's
homeboy
no ants.
Frederick Olsen to make a horror game there. That would be tight.
Ooh.
Yeah.
He'd be so good at that. We gotta
Especially if
hit
you're
him
like
up.
playing as one of the scientists that just got stationed there in that lone little like laboratory, and
Oh yeah. This is classic like the Thing setup, you know? It's perfect. Yeah.
Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Sorry.
Sounding like Jay over here. Very fancy.
Okay, let's get through the other question.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
other questions.
that jacket.
S6. I think it's Australian dollars, right? If it's an A. $5.
Australian dollars, yeah.
5 Aussie bucks. Tina, blink 23 times if the Titanfall 3 leaks are true. Mikey, blink 24 times if the Half-Life 3 Black Mesa leaks are true. JM8, blink.
Very good, Jay.
I don't know what leaks we're talking about.
Yeah, there's been leaks about Titanfall 3, Tina.
Yeah. But then immediately
aware
were
of
shut down. They'd been leaked a whole bunch, and then I think someone on the prospective team came out and said, "Hey, you've got some bad news coming."
Oh, really?
The biggest whiplash you've ever experienced. Yeah.
Who
'cause I don't
chimed
think
in?
it's a
You
thing.
know who chimed in?
I don't know. I need someone. I think it was Nick. Nick, if you're listening, I don't know if Nick's listening. Were you the one in the meeting the other day that mentioned who said about the whiplash? If so, drop me a message and say who it was. If not, I'm sure chat will know. Who did a tweet about whiplash?
Let's see. A Titanfall 3 Sumi debunked. Let's see. I'm looking it up. Okay.
While Tina looks that up, I heard another rumor recently that an Elder Scrolls Oblivion remaster drop was imminent or something. Even as soon as
I've
the
heard
next
it's
day,
imminent,
they said
and it's going to drop like as soon as they announce it. It's out like immediately.
Oh, they're gonna do what Apex did or something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't connect too much with Oblivion when I played it. I feel like it was the wrong Elder Scrolls game to play first. It was Oblivion of the ones. What you got, Tina?
So Jeff Grubb, I think he's a game journalist, is the one that said that it's not real. And then he also mentioned the games that Respawn is working on. He said Apex Legends, Star Wars Jedi 3, and Bit Reactor Star Wars game.
We would love for it to exist. We'd all love for it to exist. It is Whiplash. I would scream like a child if Titanfall 3 got announced. Like I'd be so giddy. But we know someone who worked on it. She's in the fucking call. Like she's here. We know it doesn't exist unless they've gone off and secretly worked on it like for years. And here's the thing. Maybe Tina does know and she can't say anything. And this is a whole ploy. So I don't know what to believe anymore.
Do I know what?
Tina just says what?
Yeah, maybe you know that Titanfall 3
no,
has been worked on. You just couldn't have said it.
Dude, if they were working on it, I think a lot of the OG devs would say W2F and either want to work on it or not be happy about it. I would guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Eric's done something funny here, Tina. You're now completely covered. Nobody knows your identity because there's a black bar over your eyes and you're in black and white. You could be anybody.
Look, I don't think that team does anything in threes. They didn't want to work on Modern Warfare 3 when it was going to make them a ton of fucking money. Well, I mean, there was reasons for that. Like, obviously, Activision got rid of their studio heads, and that wasn't fucking cool. Anyways, they don't do things in threes.
Yeah, and it says source for the leak and who revealed it as fake. Thank you, Eric. Jeff Grubb from Giant Bomb GameSpot is confirmed as not being real. So it would be double whiplash if it does come out to be true. And I'm fine with that. Snap my neck.
I am similarly not aware of, speaking of can't do things in threes, haha, I am not aware of anything involving Valve. So don't interpret my blinks. No, not privy to.
I do have stuff from Valve. But I can't say it.
You cheeky bastard.
I know some people at Valve and I know some information. But I pride myself on my friend EA secrecy. So
that studio is wild to me because
you better not say anymore, dude.
Valve has so much play money. They can do whatever they want when they want. They don't have a schedule. I don't even think they have producers, you guys. Like, they just do what they feel like in the moment, and they can jump from project to project. And if anything ships, it's like, cool.
Yeah.
If it
doesn't, it's like, we spent 7 years on this, but it didn't really work. Whatever. And move on. Next thing.
And Valve just keeps printing money. Like, that's
that's because they take so much money from releasing games on Steam.
Would you consider that the pinnacle of being a creative in our industry is being able to work at Valve? Because there's
I don't think so.
No,
sorry,
okay,
you finish and then I'll say so. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just within the context of having unlimited money and not having a timeline or a budget to deal with.
I find. Let me go first, Jay, because I'm too excited. Yeah. No, I feel powerfully no. Because a big part of being a creative for many people is pride, right? And you don't get to be proud of things that are secrets. If you don't ship anything, if you just develop something for 5 to 7 years, and hell, it's not even just pride. It's like, I want to see what people thought. I want to understand how if I succeeded. I want to feel that I connected with these people. If that just evaporates into the wind, that feels like shit. I'd say it's not an ideal situation for a creative. It might be the opposite even. Go ahead, Jay. Excuse my excitement.
No, that's all right. I agree. I view working at Valve as the same as all dogs go to heaven. Like, if you've been a good boy or girl, when you die, you go to heaven, but it isn't heaven. It's purgatory because you don't ship anything. Like, you get to work on cool shit, but 90% of it doesn't exist. And like, it really does. It's like, they've made a simulation for.
Look at Gabe. Does he look like he's in purgatory? I don't know.
Yeah, but no. Purgatory. I don't view purgatory. It is heaven, right? But because it's heaven, they can't release anything. Like, I'm sure they're all having a fantastic time, and I would love to work there.
They could if they rallied and wanted to. That's the thing. But everyone has their own autonomy and can decide what they work on.
Look at Half-Life Alyx. They were just like, I think Gabe has come out and said that they lose money on making the HTC Vive. Like, they actively lose money releasing that thing, but they wanted to innovate in the space. And then Half-Life Alyx was just an exploration of what can we do with this tech. They just really wanted to make something.
That's not in VR, by the way. There's a lot of losses in VR.
I think that's really amicable. Yeah,
a lot of people aren't playing on VR.
Well, it's because it's a cycle. It's nobody's buying VR because there's no good games on it, and there are good games, but there's no major releases on it, and nobody's releasing major games on it because nobody's buying it. So it's just an endless cycle.
Not just that. I'm referring specifically to, I guess, a more literal component, which is you have to sell these headsets. Well, the strategy is at least you sell headsets at a loss. Because when you do that, you get it down to a cheap enough price to get people to want to get it because they're so expensive to make. And then you try to make that up with the other platform stuff like the games. I'm just saying, like, that's a convention in that space.
Typically how consoles work as well, I believe.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Where were we?
S6 has another question. Another 10 Aussie bucks. Is game dev cyclical? I used to work in mining. It was boom bust. Commodity prices go up, everyone hired. Years later, prices go down, everyone fired. So you quit the industry, then return when you can.
That's kind of what Mikey was saying with like the whole COVID boom.
Yeah, but
lots of people got jobs.
That's true. But I would not. That's not a cycle, though, right? That was just a phenomenon, right? Not
until the next pandemic hits in 2028.
Whoa, okay, let's clip that and let's see what happens in 3 years.
It's me. It's going to be on BBC
shit.
News. Jay from DevHeads predicts second pandemic.
Video game
man.
developer predicts.
Yeah.
No, I
One of
mean,
those like Simpson prediction things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, this is just kind of my interpretation. I've heard it from people that have been in the industry longer than me and that are very smart and that have a lot of great business acumen, et cetera, that they feel like these things do happen in cycles. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's kind of hard to say because gaming is still relatively young. And when we talk about cycles, I mean, these things take time. I guess I don't have a good answer, but I don't feel like it's too cyclic, at least in the sense that what's happening right now feels pretty unprecedented because you have older people who've been in the industry a while who say it has never been this bad before. As far as like less severe cycles, I'm not sure. I haven't noticed it myself since gaming got, popular and commercialized so well. PC and console gaming, at least, in the 80s and 90s up to now. What do you two think?
It is worse now because of the amount of money it requires to make a big game. But I would agree that it is sort of cyclical, and it's sort of impacted by, in my opinion, console releases, right? So there's no new consoles in sight that we know of. Kind of like in a stale area.
Well, apart from the Switch 2, which is coming out in 2 months.
Yeah. So I think, I imagine, and this is my bet, I would put my bet on once we ever get wind of a new, PlayStation or Xbox, the demand for games for those consoles is going to rise, more money is going to come in, and you're going to get an influx of new projects. Now, what those projects are, I don't know, but I do have a feeling that that's the uptick we need, is the announcement of those. PC is just unique in the fact that they just keep coasting, and then you get new tech, and you're like, sweet, whatever, whenever it comes. But I still want to. Yeah, I think I wish I had the data on this. Majority of gamers play on console, right? I would say.
That's a good question. I think that's shifting a lot nowadays because PC gaming is becoming like the kind of like the gamer equivalent of owning a sports car. Like a lot of people who are into gaming, who first get into PC gaming when you're young, you're like, oh, I don't play on Xbox. I built my own PC, right? And that's coming from someone who was like that as a teen, right? Like, oh, I fucking did this. Dumb way of thinking, but it's true. And I think building PCs and buying PCs has become so much more accessible to the general consumer that I think there's bound to be a higher percentage of players doing that. But I think you're right in the sense that it's still a majority of console players. I wonder if there's data on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at Reddit Gaming from 2 years ago, the 2022 global game market. There was 52.9 billion on console, 103.5 billion on mobile, and 38.1 billion on PC. So that's a lot. So mobile is actually the biggest, but not many.
Damn.
Not many people that we know of working in mobile. But it makes sense that a lot of AAA companies with big IPs will want to break in on mobile because there's a lot of people there.
There's just so much money in it. Yeah. It's just so much. Yeah, I think there's a bit cyclical. It just depends on how drastic it is and the reasons, because I agree with Tina on the console side, but also if we look at how many releases there were on the PS5 compared to the PS4, first party exclusives and stuff like that, I think it's a lot drier on the PS5. And Xbox have completely, effectively gutted themselves by doing Game Pass, which has helped them tremendously and is doing great, and is a good thing. But it's stopped them releasing console exclusives, right? You now don't have to buy an Xbox to play X game. You can also just play on PC, right? So that's another reason for why I think PC gaming is is growing so exponentially.
How much was that influenced by them buying Activision, you think? Because the US government, in order to let that deal go through, one of the conditions was you can't have exclusive games on Xbox from Activision.
Yeah, potentially that might have been
Yeah.
a huge influence on that. But also it could have been they realized the PC market is so big, and if they start trying to corner that and take some of that steam away from Steam,
Mhm.
they can break into it, and they have in a certain sense. But currently, Steam are still the kings, just because it's such a unified place to purchase and is like the
Mhm.
go-to, right? And they make so much money. Like they make Steam makes 10% off of every game sold.
No, 30.
30%. It's ridiculous.
30 usually. I think it's
I
pretty,
think it goes down if you make more money, right? Like if you make a certain amount more, it goes down.
Not
They,
that I
they
know
may
of.
they may cut deals with bigger companies. Like I'm sure GTA
Yeah,
6 will have a deal of some sort.
But yeah, if you think about any game that makes X amount of money on a release, if it was released on Steam, Steam took 30% of that. That's why Gabe gets to sit in his hammock and do that, because every game that's released does that.
What's an interesting way? Like if you were running a company that had to decide on layoffs or not. Like one interesting thing I think you could I'm speaking out of my ass, but like these new games that are looking to be on different platforms, right? Like the Sony games exclusives that are now porting to PC. That's an interesting way to, if you were a financial person, to think about maintaining the dev team financially in a way that's different. Like keep them busy, like they have work to do, and you know that releasing your game on PC will,
and getting like a second influx, right, of revenue from doing a second release on PC. Yeah,
which means that potentially helps with not having mass layoffs. The other thing too, though, that's kind of weird is if you do have a lot of contractors, once you let go of them, that doesn't count as a layoff on paper to any state you're in. So, you know, if you never hear of your favorite game studio not having layoffs at all, like that's probably
it
why
might be because of that.
They're using a lot of contract work. Which, you know,
doing that or
has
wasting a lot of money potentially. But to be honest, like I agree with Mikey in the sense of with these big companies, sometimes you do have to take a risk and try and do something new. And if you lose money on trying to innovate, and even if it doesn't come out, I think that's still worth it. But that's coming from the artist in me. Like the businessman in me is like, oh no, because we never really got to touch on like the indie side of all of this much. And I think some of that is, a lot of it is rev share. A lot of early companies that start working on things, it is just passionate people working on a thing mostly for free. And then they get revenue share of the product when it comes out. And the rest of it goes to the company and some of it to Steam and blah, 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 blah. Because you don't have the money to pay people, right? Like my project I'm working on now, I might need potential people to help with certain aspects in the future. And I can't be like, I'll pay you this much or I'll contract you for this much because I don't have the money to pay them, right? So it'll have to be when the game comes out, regardless of how much it makes, you're going to make a percentage of that profit as a, you know, reimbursement for your time. That's just the thing. But like, let's say the game makes a decent amount of money. Well, some of that's going to Steam, some of that's going to the people that worked on it before. You only have a small pocket of change now. Well, then what do you do with that? Do you reinvest that into hiring people to then make the next thing? But when you do that, your next thing has to be a success because you will just burn through all your money. And it's just AAA, just on a much smaller scale. And there's not much risk when you first go into it because it's just like you're working on it out of passion. But once you make a little bit of money, the risk exponentially goes up. Like you could lose your livelihood from having your second game even just do okay. You're cooked. You're done.
It's like
So
Tina
it's
said,
tough.
right? That there's a responsibility, and it's the one that, you know, when we talk about video games and we talk about the art, we don't often talk about the business side, of course. And there's kind of I think it's worth noting that a lot of times when we talk about the business side, we might think negatively. You might think about the people who don't understand the art side and they just want to make money. But you do need to keep in mind, like if you hire people, you have responsibility, and you do have to run a business, and you do have to keep the lights on. So as much as we could talk about what you're saying there, risk is risky, and the art is important. But anybody who gets into game development should at least have a little bit of an understanding and sympathy toward the needs of the business side of stuff. You can't neglect it if you're going to start a company. You have to be very careful. Yeah. You are forming a business.
Yeah. And that's the toughest thing for me as indie is the sense of currently I just want to make my game, right? Like I just want to make it the best I can and be like, oh, I'll do this, and isn't this going to be cool and blah, 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 blah. But then it suddenly dawns on you like, oh no, I have to think about how am I going to market this thing? How much is that going to cost? Oh, what am I going to need for localization and this and that and this? And
it all costs
you
money.
Can't just sit in your artistic bubble. You have to do all of it yourself because you can't pay anyone else to do it. So it's a lot of hats to wear. I mean, that's just indie in general, but it
is one of those.
It's tough.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No.
I was just gonna say it's one of those beautiful little things for me. If I'm ever feeling negative or disappointed with how the space is, I think about the beauty of modding. Even in the indie space, obviously, tons of creativity. A lot of people do it on the side, no expectation of money. But partially for, I guess, nostalgic reasons, because I played a lot of mods when I was younger because I didn't have a good computer and couldn't get new games. A lot of stuff that happens in modding is purely 100% has to be for the passion and the creativity of it. That doesn't mean it's necessarily all good and impressive and worth checking out, but it is something that's very special and nice about the space, right? When you deep into the modding scene, there's might be people that are doing it for the interest of I'm trying to build a portfolio to get hired, but a lot of it is just I'm really excited by this idea and I want to make it happen. Or I'm passionate about this project, and I just want to tweak things to make it even better for what I want to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me being fanciful. So.
I want to get to this next question because I think it's really important that we address this. Sovereign donates €5 and says, if big game companies need to cut costs, maybe they should start by cutting the massive salaries of their grossly overpaid execs. Just a thought.
Yeah, this is always the case, right? Like, regardless of scale, it's true, but it's so difficult to get people to do that, right? Because in an ideal case, that is exactly what should happen. But these execs, like, I always think back to the idea of, and I'm going to misquote this, but the idea of a fish is in a tank, and suddenly their tank becomes bigger. This is the sense of getting a pay rise, right? Your tank gets bigger because you've got a pay rise. The fish then grows to the size of the tank because it's eating more because of its pay rise. Then, for whatever reason, their tank needs to shrink because, reductions in pay or whatever. But the fish is now too big for the tank to get smaller, so it can't and it suffocates, right? This is what most execs are like. They grow to the size of their tank. They get pay increases, which means they buy expensive houses, they buy fucking yachts, they buy all this stuff. So they physically cannot take pay cuts because they've grown to the size of their tank. So they just push it to other people. And that's just spending money irresponsibly. But a lot of people who get a lot of money tend to spend their money irresponsibly, right? So
as far as I'm aware, there is no laws that protect the workers from having a huge discrepancy in their pay versus their CEO in the United States. I see in the comments here people are mentioning, well, Nintendo doesn't do that. There's a reason for that. There are laws in Japan that protect the average worker. There is a requirement that a company cuts costs at the very top before laying anybody off. And that is something that's unique to Japan. And we have someone potentially lined up to talk about the differences between Japanese game development and American game development, which I think would be fascinating.
So hype.
But yeah, I thought it was awesome when I saw Nintendo's CEO, I think it's Iwata, right? Yeah, he took a pay cut to avoid layoffs, and everyone was praising that. But it is the law there. And sometimes I wish that was the case here, but politics getting involved in video games, blah.
Politics, and also like
Yeah.
people. I understand people not wanting to take a pay cut, but like if I was in that situation and I could, like, yeah, you can take a pay cut and it will mean, a whole bunch of people in your company will still be able to survive and have jobs. I would do it. But that's just me. I'm also not an executive who's making a fuck ton of money, so I can't say.
I'd love to have an accountant on here too, because I think there is specifics with the way they divvy up that money, right? Like if they say 100 million goes to marketing this year for this game, just because the CEO may take a pay cut, I don't know how you deal with that loss, right? If you have to spend like 150 million on marketing or something, and you're like, oh, surprise, 50 million too much. Even if a CEO takes a 50 million pay cut, does that? I personally don't know if that helps with anything in particular. I think at that point we didn't even talk about what shareholders do, or the stock price, how that impacts if there's layoffs or not. At that point, I think companies are beholden to shareholders more than the developers. So have you seen that meme where someone says that they're glad that they could add value to the shareholder or something as like a sarcastic comment? Like, but did you provide value to the shareholder? It's like, yeah, I did. I feel good about that.
Oh man,
Yeah, dude.
it's so complex.
So complex. Yeah, it's not like a good versus evil all the time. There is bad optics. I will 100% say that. The optics look fucking bad when you lay off like pregnant women or people that are on sick leave. That happened to what was it? Didn't Twitter do that when Elon bought that company? He laid off like
The mass
women
layoffs.
yeah. Doesn't look good.
No.
We have 3 more questions.
Oh, let's go.
Sussy Guru 2000 donates 10 euros and says, do you think real constraints versus artificial constraints inherently lead to different outcomes? Example, hardware limits in the late 90s versus aiming for a 90s look without actual hardware limitations.
That's a good question. We've spoken about it a whole bunch of like how constraints can effectively lead to innovations in the space because they did back in the day. They led to a lot of our favorite genre conventions and stuff like that. But yeah, when you artificially do it to try and aim for a specific look or a specific feel, I guess you're trying to force it in a sense, and it's less organic. I think a lot of it just comes from not aiming or the actual hardware limitations, but in a sense of trying to do a thing and it not working out and having to find a solution is how those innovations happen in programming and art and stuff like that. You stumble across these things, and the hardware limitations is what led to a lot more of that stumbling, right? We can't do this thing. How do we do it, right? So yeah, I don't think aiming for a specific look can do much for that kind of innovation.
I think it definitely, if the question is, do you think the real constraints versus artificial inherently different outcomes? I feel like the answer is definitely yes, because if you are not constrained, if you're not constrained, you have to be referring to a time at which you were constrained, and you're not subject to that. Therefore, you are bringing a ton of years of influence that have happened since the constraints existed to now when you're doing it. And that is, I mean, almost definitely going to influence you somehow into the thing that you're doing. As much as a lot of these like boomer shooters will adopt and buy into a lot of the active constraints of certain games that existed in the 90s or whatever, they're 100% going to bring modernizations to it. So I feel like you're definitely going to get a different outcome just because you're developing at a different time where there's newer standards. And also because when we're talking about constraints, a lot of the constraints that we're talking about are, when it comes to hardware, are aesthetic. And you can have an old style aesthetic and modern conventions, right, in your game.
Yeah. 100%. And that can be for the benefit of the game in a sense of, there's lots of limitations that we had back in the day that could have been squashed out and are just like relics of not understanding how to do things. A lot of that is to do with interface and like how people interface with the game itself, and we've ironed a lot of those things out. So you can have the aesthetic, like Mikey was saying, but conventions from modern game design that allow for a smoother play experience.
I don't know about you guys, but I like being able to reload in first-person shooters, right? It's as a design mechanic, and Jay, this is a great thing. This is a thing for the player to track that they need to be mindful of. It's an opportunity for decisions and ammo management. I wouldn't want to go back to a time in Doom, for example, where like we just didn't reload. We just had all the ammo. I didn't have to think about it. It's not to say like Doom was a shallow game. It's to say you offer depth to a gameplay experience in an FPS when you have to manage your ammo more carefully. And it's depth that I don't want to get rid of. And I don't want to be around for the time where we were like just rounding the bend to get to the reload convention that we have now of playing a game like Marathon, which did have reloading, but didn't have a reload button. So the way Marathon worked was you had to just, at a certain point when you were shooting, when you emptied your magazine or whatever, you would forcefully reload. But as a player, you couldn't press R to reload. You just had to keep shooting. So if you were close to the end of your mag, you just shot out. And that's like an interesting mechanic, and it's a time where you have an opportunity cost, whatever. But it's one of those things that, like, I'm happy with that modernization. I don't see a lot of gameplay value add going back to that.
Yeah,
I'm struggling to understand their question because I don't know what they mean by different outcomes.
Yeah, I guess that's a little high level, isn't it? I interpreted that as, is the game going to be different? And my answer would be because you're working with years of innovation right behind you.
Just as like a specific example, like if you wanted a 90s visual aesthetic, I think that's really easy to achieve on modern, with modern hardware, because it's just like, it's easier just to roll back what you want to do. I would argue that the outcome is potentially different from when you did it in the 90s, because there could be a situation where like, oh, we baked in the bright lighting into the textures here on this map, but we're at modern times, you can just rely on a lighting system to make things brighter.
Yeah, like
right?
Lumen.
So I don't know what they really understand by this question.
Yeah.
So maybe
I guess
would chime in.
I guess another different outcome, and I'm being interpretive here.
Yeah.
If you rely on modern tech, you might have a less stylized game, like especially right now with the marketplace being so wide and expansive and offering so much to developers. You have a lot of projects that don't have a sense to develop their own sense of style, their art style, because they don't have to. They just use a lot of reused assets, and they might be going more for the design than they are the aesthetic side of the game. So that could be another different outcome. Whereas back then, it's like, shit, we only have this much bandwidth as far as our video memory goes. So how are we going to make the game look good?
Mm-hmm.
It's something I'm struggling with at the moment with, like, I'm making my game in Unreal Engine. A lot of the time when you're making games in major engines, you're fighting against making it look like it was made in that engine. Like, we've said it before on streams, I can smell that a game was made in Unity. Like, I can feel it. The same with Unreal. And you're always just trying to fight against that. Like, how do you visually get past that? Going down to like how the camera works and its systems and blah, blah, blah.
Engineers.
Did you know, Jay, that Escape from Tarkov was made on Unity?
Really?
No.
Yeah, dude. Isn't that
They did a
fucking
great
wild?
job of making it not
They
feel,
sure did.
not feel like that.
I'm not saying this is a counterpoint like, oh no, Jay, your nose isn't as good as you think. I'm just saying, isn't it fucking wild? Like what some games
They did a
do
great job.
with
They
the
did
power
a
of their
fantastic
engineers.
job of that, right? And that's part of the new kind of constraint for devs is like, how do you get past that? And that leads to other creative innovations of like, okay, well, how are we going to change how our jumps and our characters feel? I want to talk about specifics, but I can't because I haven't revealed my game yet. But soon.
We're very excited
Soon.
about it, by the way, Jay. We're very excited.
Dower
Me too.
Dodger Esquire donates $2 and says, "My money is on Tina as the secret Titanfall leaker." Look, dude, I work in the industry. I'm not gonna leak fucking shit. It's not gonna come from fucking me. I like video games. I want to stay in video
Eric
games.
is
And
showering
I
you with
respect it.
dollar bills for those
Oh
of
my
you who can't
god.
see right
It's
now. I don't understand the meaning of this.
Ah!
It does you more money, Eric.
Dude,
Wait, I don't get it. Is the implication here that Tina's getting money for leaking? Why is she getting?
you would not get money
Probably
for
get-
leaking. You would be
That's what I'm saying. I don't
ostracized.
understand. It's,
Continuing to be to allow to exist in the industry for not breaking into
My
game.
favorite is
I see.
what was that early 2000s people would say things like, "My uncle works for Nintendo and he says Mario's
and he
coming out next
says-
year."
Yeah, well, my uncle said the Nintendo 65 is coming out the
Yeah.
year after that.
Dude.
My
Take
dad is
leaks with
Johnny
a grain of
Microsoft.
salt. Yeah.
Your dad is Johnny Microsoft?
Yeah, and he birthed Halo, and he told me that Master Chief has a gun in the next one.
Yeah. Oh my god. All right, here's a good. Oh god damn it.
What's wrong, Tina?
Okay, wait. Our good friend Phil. I'm just going to assume you've got to Phil's.
Phil, Mia
No,
sucks.
don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Mia
Good
Sup's a
friend of
pretty
the
safe way to
podcast
do
and the
it.
channel.
Yeah.
I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Fill my ass up.
Tina's
gives
doubled
50 Norwegian kroner. Say lays seem to be random to whether a game's successful or not. With Visceral
Yeah.
getting left out in the cold, is there any sort of safety net for developers?
No, I don't. The safety net would be whatever the government offers to a person who loses their job. That's it.
I would argue. Well, so I need to. I wish I had more context on this Visceral situation. I'm sorry that I don't. But if you're a developer right now working at a studio and you're worried about future layoffs, I think there's a couple of things you could do. First and foremost, gauge where you are in the development cycle. Ask about when your green lights are. Ask about when the next, if there's a financial milestone you need to hit. I would just stay curious. Do they have plans for you for the next year? How far do the plans go out? If there seems to be a blank space after May, like I would do the safety thing. And I've always told friends this, like if you're curious about other opportunities, feel free to explore them. Like there's no harm in getting interview practice, even if you're not serious about going to another job. You can stay fresh in your interview skills, but also know what you're worth. And I think that's the most important thing. As a developer, you need to understand what your worth is. If you find that another company is willing to pay you more, then obviously you're worth more than what you're currently getting, and that's a valuable thing to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would stay curious and ask questions of your leaders, see how much they're willing to divulge. A lot of times people are pretty candid. If there's shareholder stuff involved, like if you're a publicly traded company, they may not be able to disclose too much because that's considered insider trading at some point. But I would, if you're worried about dude, what would you say to people that are worried about layoffs? That's hard. Keep your resume up to date.
I think the question was more about the safety net, like what could exist for people who do get laid off. But I think what you're saying is important to discuss too, which is what can you do So your safety net is the one you create yourself before the bad thing happens, essentially. And yeah, I think it's always good. People might be more candid than you'd expect, talking to your lead and just being like, look, I'm a little concerned. Can you tell me, you talked about milestones. Can you tell me how our budget is looking for this project? Can you tell me what the plans are for after this? And then, I mean, don't be paranoid about it, but read between the lines if you have to. If this person can't be honest with you or won't be honest with you, do your best or just listen and maybe they'll be more honest than you think. It's worth a try. And I mean, I've never heard of a situation on a team where a lead or somebody mentioned, oh, so-and-so asked me about their future and they seem nervous about remaining here, now I look less of I think less of that person. Like you're not gonna, I don't think you're gonna come across as a disbeliever or somebody who doesn't isn't motivated at the company just because you asked, because you were concerned, especially nowadays.
I would be
What do you
cautious. I would be cautious. It depends on the relationship with your boss. If your boss is a total a-hole and you have to manage up to get your shit done, I would not give them any sort of inch to think less of you, just because you're.
So
always
sounds like you're
depends on your
saying
scenario.
you practice discretion. Don't go to your lead if you don't trust them and ask them these questions. Okay.
The other thing I would say is another way to be vigilant is I think now more than ever, especially if there's like a hybrid work from home situation, to be as collaborative and friendly as possible, as much as possible, right? Like, I don't know why I feel the need to say this, but I've worked with some developers where they're very resistant to work on things that may not be their expertise, let alone maybe their own bug for a feature they didn't work on. Don't get siloed into just your stuff, because there is a very real value in being able to be knowledgeable in different areas of the game engine, but also just being collaborative. I mean, within reason, right? Like, I would ask for help when you need it, but I've dealt with some devs that were like, I'm not doing that, absolutely not. And I'm like, but you know, you can't really.
I've
Now's not the time to do that.
I've been in that situation too, where somebody will come to me and say like, I just don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a really tough conversation because they don't understand that this is something like it might be something like, okay, I'll give a harder example. Playtesting. Like, oh, I don't want to play test. Like, I don't like the game. And the game is frustrating for me. It's like, well, we all have to play test, man. Like, this is something that
that's valuable.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, that's extremely valuable.
And it's okay to be frustrated. But
share
these
why.
people who often when that's brought up, it's something like, well, the game's not really for me. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a huge fan and play all the different games in the genre of the kind of game that you're working on. But I mean, you got to play test. Like it's a part of the job, and it's something that everybody needs to do or should do at least. And if everybody is doing it, what makes you so special? So it's important to contribute with those things.
Mm-hmm. I would also argue don't quit before you have something new, because the game industry is so volatile right now that it's not a guarantee that you'll have something lined up. Just because.
Well, even if you do, man, even if you do have something lined up, be careful. Like it's possible to go. I don't mean to fearmonger, but you might go somewhere and then get laid off, right? Like, and that would really suck too. If you're valuable where you are.
That happened recently to someone that I know. They went from a big studio to a startup, and the startup just said, we're folding, and that really sucks. So yeah, you got to be vigilant.
Yeah, it's networking in all senses. Network within your company. Be willing to collaborate. Be willing to show interest in the rest of your team's work. I like. This might be just because I'm indie, but if I'm thinking of who am I going to keep on, someone who is hyper good at their one specific thing, or someone who's a bit of a generalist but is willing to pick up and help where needed, I'm probably going to keep on the person who's more flexible. Because but that's an indie perspective. Like, we're all generalists and do everything, right? Maybe that mindset would change up in a higher scale towards AAA. But yeah, network, make friends.
Argue that paying attention to what AI features are being used in your potential future game is something to consider too.
Yes, 100%. Even though I hate AI and I do not like what it's doing, I think there are definitely some spaces where if you just denounce it wholeheartedly, you are actively shooting yourself in the foot. And I'm not talking from an art perspective here. I'm talking from a systems perspective. So even within art, 3D modeling, I'm a 3D artist at heart. And there are systems within 3D art that are tedious to do, namely UV mapping. It's really difficult. If you are completely wholeheartedly against AI, that you would not use a tool that would help you UV map quicker, you are making yourself slower at the job, and like you could use that time to be more creative and actually create art, right? It's not taking away from your artistic ability. So don't just denounce it wholeheartedly. Like, if there are tools that allow you to do art, maybe look into them. I'm not saying use them, but you could be helping yourself. And yeah, like, is AI gonna take away from jobs, and is that something that's we're seeing already? I don't think so. I don't think any like executive worth their salt would get rid of their art team to have AI churn out the same shit over and over. But then again, I'm not an executive, so.
Gotta like root for Disney in this perspective to like take down all those AI companies using their intellectual property.
Yeah, which is weird to say that I would be like, yeah, go Disney, sue those fuckers.
Yeah. Okay, one more. Far Too Many Frogs donates $2 and says, pensive politics wildly waves Bioshock around. That's more of a statement than a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pensive meaning to think deeply. Politics. Yeah, it affects everything, right? There's a knock-on effect of every political decision that's made will affect you to varying degrees. And like Tina was saying, maybe not enough game devs are actually thinking of that right now, that it's going to affect them. I don't know how it's going to affect the indie space. It's interesting to think about, like, what knock-on effects could all of this have on indies?
The tariffs, you mean?
Yeah, like, I don't know.
Well, let's say you work in like Maine and you're an indie dev. Your electricity bill's up already, right? That cost is up because electricity comes from Canada and there's a tariff on that. So you need.
So like things like that, the costs just go up. Obviously, general living and stuff like that would go up, but like actual sales and manufacturing and stuff like that. Because like from a AAA space, if you're thinking, well, what kind of costs are there in physically releasing your game? And you know, indie aren't really dealing with that unless they're going to the custom companies like Limited Run and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's tough. It's just, I think it is important, as you were saying, Far Too Many Frogs, to try and think a little bit deeper about not necessarily the stance you take on either side of a political like wave, but thinking about, okay, well, how can what is happening affect me and the people that I'm supporting around me? If you're in charge of a company, right, you have a responsibility to think like that.
Someone asked if tariffs are halted for 90 days. Yes, I think it's 89 now, but doesn't mean that they're gone. We're still waiting to see what happens.
I think there were also exceptions too, if I remember reading right. Like they weren't paused for certain countries.
There's one potential exception that's interesting on the tariffs, which is if I think what you're importing is considered art, there may not be a tariff on it. But I don't know how you define art legally, so that's interesting.
Yeah, do they count games as art?
Girl, I'm not going to get into that fight.
We should. That should be an episode. Are games art? Because if people have differing opinions on that, that's really, really good to talk about.
Yeah, no, it'll be a wild ride for a little while. But yeah, global potential recession that will impact game development in your games.
Think deeply, pensive, that word, Far Too Many Frogs. We should be doing that in all aspects of our lives. We should think deeper about everything that we're doing. For sure.
Oh man.
What time is it? Okay, well, if that was the last dono, do you guys have any final things to say on the subject that you're burning to say? If not, just say like, or something like that.
There was one thing when I was listing a few different reasons when I said like, oh, I want to zoom out and talk about why I feel like layoffs are still happening. And I talked about COVID and the tools getting better, etc. Someone in the chat said something like about not mentioning AI. And I noticed that, and I wanted to mention, I feel like AI is definitely going to affect the games industry, and that's a huge topic. I think it definitely already has, but I think that's like, because it's so new, it's small, and like we're about to see pretty soon bigger effects. So I
would argue
I
that
wouldn't
it's
say that.
I wouldn't say
Basically,
it's small. Go ahead,
Okay,
finish.
you
I'm
wouldn't
sorry.
you think it's big already? Is what you're saying?
Yes,
Like the impact has
yes.
been big? Okay.
And-
To
well,
me,
sorry, go.
you go ahead,
no.
Tina, and then I'll get back to my stuff. What are you
They're-
doing with your hands?
You're trying to like shut the fuck up, Tina. Go ahead, finish.
Okay. Basically, I think there's been an effect of AI on the games industry. I don't feel like the layoffs that we're seeing now are much attributed to AI, because AI is still new and it's not as deeply useful as some people might think. I understand the argument like, oh, maybe there's some executives that thought they could lay people off and replace them with AI. I believe that could happen, but I feel like overall it's lower than you might think, just because we're still figuring AI out, and I feel like the impact could be greater. So, what do you feel about, like, Tina?
I would say it's big for a couple of reasons. The first is that it's already impacting game development. If you're using a voice actor, they are currently on strike. They've been on strike for quite a while now, right, Mikey? I feel like you would know this.
I'm not SAG-AFTRA, but yeah, I
Okay.
believe that there is a strike, and there's
Yes.
definitely been strife. They've been trying to strike a deal, I think.
I get emails about it like every other day.
Yeah, so you're not going to get your favorite actor, actress in a video game anytime soon. So that sucks. Hopefully they figure that out before GTA 6. What's another one? I believe that there's been headlines where some executives have already said, like, we're excited to use AI. If you look at Netflix's games specifically right now too, I only know this because I've been keeping an eye on them. They're hiring like a lot of people just to focus on AI specifically for games. And that to me is a little bit scary.
When you say
as
that, you're
a
referring
developer.
to tools
Yes.
and art within the AI space, not creating artificial intelligence to, be ready for combat and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think there's people pushing towards that already. I want to say that there's probably a lot of big companies exploring that in our industry that just have not made it very public. And there's a lot of morale concerns that come with it that haven't been figured out yet. There's no regulations either. Like right now, you could use a tool to create audio for you on the fly, right? Wasn't there like a strike too? Like there was a contract dispute with Apex Legends, I remember seeing not too long ago, where they wanted the voice actors to sign away their rights to their voice in case they wanted to create more lines with AI. Like
Yeah.
I could tell you both, and people listening, I've already heard my voice used in AI form. Somebody made an AI version of my voice.
Yeah.
In a disturbing, weird way too.
Oh.
Really? Oh, that sucks.
They I mean, I'll just say it. I don't think it's too inappropriate. It's slightly obscene. They took, because I was, I've done a lot of live streams. I've done voice acting for years, so I guess they just pulled some of that, and they made an audio clip of my voice telling the people in their Discord to stop announcing in the Discord when they go to masturbate because it's creepy and weird. So it was me doing that, addressing a problem in their Discord. I don't know if it's a meme or a gag, but it was very strange for me to hear myself talk about that to a Discord community that I don't know, and it was an interesting moment. It didn't sound too much like me, but it did sound like, yeah, it could easily be derivative of me, and I didn't know how to react. It was the first time I've ever heard something like that.
I think the front line for a lot of this AI stuff is Hollywood, and they are getting weaker by the day, and that's telling for me as a game developer, and that's scary.
Yeah. Lots
Yeah.
of new laws need to come in, and they haven't, because this is a very new advancement
Like
in the
even writing
technology.
scripts,
Frogs.
right? Go ahead.
Frogs here is saying it's a meme. Okay, so it was a meme. Doesn't make a difference to me. I still have
Yeah.
a strange reaction to hearing somebody do that. But okay, now I know for sure it's a meme. I might have to look that up.
Damn.
Anyway, so I hear what you're saying, Tina. It sounds like you feel like there's a greater impact already done than I'm even acknowledging, which could be true. Maybe the impact's greater than I'm saying. I think one thing we can agree on is the impact's going to be pretty big. So
Only time will tell to see how big it is.
Let's see when it comes to a head. I think that if you're in a game studio right now and you're working on AI specific features, like just speak up while you can. Don't stay silent if there's things that bother you. But yeah, I would keep an eye on that pretty closely too. Just how your company's utilizing it, that space. And there's new, there's new shit popping up all the time. It's hard to keep up with the AI tech changes.
Yeah, you also just need to try though. Like I was saying about not denouncing it wholeheartedly, is because in the AAA space, if you have two artists who are on equal level of skill, but one can use AI tools to allow them to finish the product quicker, like I was saying with UV mapping or something, so they can pump out twice as much art, they are twice as valuable to the team and will be prioritized.
And hey, man,
right?
Here's another component. Even if I imagine that there's pressure on teams who might feel like, well, we don't want to use AI for the ethical or whatever reasons, but they still feel the pressure because guess what? Other people don't have those ethical concerns,
people
and they're going to outpace you. So what do you do in those situations?
But that's the thing. Like, one of the things I've already seen, I can't remember specific examples of the names, but indie games that proudly state this game was made with no use of AI, like at the beginning. Like, that's the first thing they say on the splash screen. And I think in the indie space, we're going to see a lot more of that, of like, this was handcrafted. There is no AI use in this game.
All organic.
Yeah, all organic, hand-fed indie game.
Yeah. I think as an artist, you might be sweating right now, and I don't blame you, because
oh yeah, for sure.
Even look at like the Miyazaki stuff that just came out. It's pretty controversial. Like, I don't know, man. It's fucked up.
Extremely. Is the mainly reason it's fucked up is because the man himself would
hated AI.
Hate it. He would absolutely hate that. He'd say it was an affront to life. Like, God. Yeah, this is like a huge problem. But all the people who are using it for that don't understand that they are so against those practices and stuff like that. It's just very ironic. But yeah, man, we could talk all day. We could do an entire episode.
Yeah, you know what? I should have never answered your question, Jay. Of like, any last quick things before we wrap up with talking about fucking AI. I just saw the comment.
AI.
I saw the comment in the chat, and I wanted to give my perspective of why I didn't mention that in my theories. But I also hear what Tina's saying. Maybe the impact is greater than I believe, and time will tell how big the impact eventually gets. Point is, there's a lot of stuff that affected and is affecting game dev layoffs. And it's going to be a very interesting time for all of us as gamers and as developers to see how it all happens.
Yeah, 100%.
One positive thing, I guess, and I like to say this every time. I know I've said it before, and I don't want to end on this somber ass note. Layoffs are terrible. The best that we can hope for is those people get a new opportunity and a new challenge, start their own studios, use the tools that now exist that allow you to make terrific games that seem like they should be made by a 50 to 100 person team, and it's actually just 1 to 4 people. At least there's that. The best that we can hope for is those people don't leave the industry and they take their creativity somewhere else and they take a new opportunity. And hey, it's pretty good for players and gamers. I appreciate all the sympathy from players and gamers toward developers right now, because honestly, like, you guys are getting some great stuff. When people get laid off, they either go and they make another game or they switch industries. You still get the games that you like to play. So to have the empathy and sympathy from players and gamers is probably noteworthy for us as developers.
Yeah.
So.
We also had a pretty big question from Platinum Kush in our Second Wind DevHeads podcast chat. I'd like to address that at some point in the future. So let's. I just want to give him a shout out, or her, or they, them. That we'll address it at some point. Thank you for participating in our Discord chat. We love seeing people interact in there, and yeah, we'll do more of that next time.
Yeah, by the way, anybody wants to come to the Discord, Eric, you want to give them a link, maybe, if you don't mind? Feel free to come. We are active there and chatting as much as we can. Come to the Dev Heads on the Second Wind Discord and let us say hello, or let us know what you thought. Ask questions.
100%. Yeah. And to everyone who enjoys the show, not just with Dev Heads, but any show here on Second Wind, we are supported by you guys through YouTube memberships and Patreon. So you can get some special little added goodies there on the $5 tier and above, which is you get ad-free videos, and you also get experimental videos. I mean, Yahtzee is releasing his lore reading series, which he absolutely adores doing. There's one out currently on the channel, so you can get a taster, but the rest are going to be Patreon exclusives. So you're going to get special content. And from my perspective, eventually, my experimental video at some point this year is going to be a special exclusive reveal of the game I'm working on. So if you guys want to keep up to date on the goings on of that.
Jay.
Oh, yes. So check that out when it comes out eventually. Other than that, yeah, you guys got anything else to say? If not, just scream.
I don't scream on command, Jay. How dare you?
Tina does though. Tina let out like a wire. Yeah. So to everyone in chat, everyone who donated, everyone who's asked questions, thank you so much. And to Eric, our producer in the background, wonderful as always. Thank you,
Eric.
Tina and Mikey, for being amazing co-hosts, and thank you, Ludo, wherever she is, who's recovering from her surgery right now. Bless her. Give her some love in the Discord. And from me, bye-bye, guys. See you in the next episode.
Bye-bye.